everybody, it's me, Laura, and I'm back today and we're going to do a fall scene in a Christmas ball. And I think you guys are really going to love this one. I had to do this. It was just an imperative thing, just had to, right? Anyways, I'm bringing in some orange clay and I'm bringing in different shades of orange. So one was much darker. I had one that was more bright and kind of a medium sort of orange. And then I added some white in to my darker orange and created a really light orange. And the reason why I'm doing that is we're bringing in this Christmas ball and it's got an opening on the side. You're going to take some of this dark clay, you're going to cut off a section of it, and then you're going to lay it down onto the Christmas ball itself. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay this thing like north to south axis, or axis, if you will. Sorry, axis. Trying to got that completely wrong, right? Anyways, I'm laying this down on the ball, and then I'm going to cut or use my X-Acto knife to cut a, you might say, oval kind of piece onto the ball itself. Now, as I do this, I'm going to just cut down straight, kind of straight on this side, okay? I want it to be a little straight, but then the next piece or the next cut I make will be or have a bit of a curve to it. Now, once I get this curved piece, cut, and you'll notice I've been flattening it down. Just so you know, this clay has also been flattened out on a number 4 setting on my Atlas pasta machine. I'm then going to bring in my you might say my medium orange, and I'm going to place this piece right next to the one I had just laid down. Now, you'll also know it was a straight line. I made sure it was cut really well, and I'm also, again, gently just laying that down. I'll create that nice little curved cut on that, which we're going to be calling a pumpkin eventually. This will be our pumpkin, and get that nice little clean look. Once I have that cut though, we're going to bring in the lighter shade and place it next to it and do the same thing yet again. And then repeat this process using the different sheets of colored orange clay going all the way around the ball. Once I got all of my sheets laid down, and I did use my light orange right at the opening area into this ball, into our pumpkin ball. And you could tell I put pieces and parts around where it was like, okay, I'm not going to get a really nice clean look here. I will come in with my burnisher and I'll burnish up, or I should say fissure, all the little cut areas together. And then also use my blade here to just cut off the excess and get a nice clean look around the opening on our pumpkin ball. Now, once I have this all cleaned up with a nice clean cut around the opening, and I come in with my burnisher, and like I said, I'm just burnishing up any of those cut edges, I'm going to bring in my stack. So my stack has been rolled out on a number 1 setting on my Atlas pasta machine. So that means then I take 2 sheets, cut them into a nice square, then cut that in half, lay that on top of each other, and so on, and you get your stack here. So I'm going to take pieces of, and I had some extra stacks set aside, and I'm using the smaller one. I'm going to use up the extras here. And what I'm doing is I'm taking a slice out of this small cane. Don't ever throw away your stacks. You get a little tiny, you're like, what am I going to do with this? Cut a slice, roll it through your pasta machine, and in this case, I'm rolling it on a number 4 setting, and I'm going to cut a nice little checker line, if you will, all the way along with my blade. Once I have this line of checker set up, we're going to place this down onto where the fissured, or I should say the cut areas are between the different sections. Lay it right down over the top and do it all the way down on our pumpkin. Now, if you have some extra black and white checker, just go ahead and cut that away from the pumpkin part itself. And then once that's done, you're going to go ahead and create more of these lines of checker going over the little sectioned areas where we had cut with our X-Acto knife. With all the checker now being laid down onto our pumpkin, I went with just a regular knitting needle and just kind of, you might say, flattened down a little bit of that light orange clay around the opening into our little pumpkin. I want to make sure it was all nice and adhered to the glass ball itself. All right, so now we're going to bring in our cutters because this ball now has been completely baked through at 275 degrees for about 10 minutes. You know, I just want to make sure it was thorough, right? And then I'm bringing in some circle cutters. I need to put a kind of a bottom on, right? So I cut out a piece of black, and this was rolled out on a number 4 setting, and I just had this circle cutter. It worked great for fitting right into the bottom, creating our nice little base inside our pumpkin. Now I took this out eventually. I was patting it down, I liked it, but the inside was not quite right. I thought, how do I make this work where I have a little scene in the pumpkin and yet the orange is kind of not working for me? So I thought on that, and I thought, well, I'll set it to the side and I'll just bring in the pieces I want to go ahead and use. And so I brought out this Tainsky 3D cutter set, and I really love the little fox. Oh, he was so cute. He was so adorbs. I was like, oh, we got to do that. And I was also looking at the owl. And mind you, I did cut out some pieces using the owl, but my heart was set on that little fox. And so I'm bringing in, this is like half gold clay and half red, okay? And I mixed that together and I get this really nice look, which was great for this fox. I thought, yes, this is the right color. This is what I needed. I didn't need a bright red. I wanted something that was a nice mix. So doing a half gold, half red really works great. And then I'm laying this down. This sheet was rolled out on a number 3 setting using my Atlas pasta machine. I needed something to make sure I still get the indent. And if it's not a 3, it's a 2, but I'm pretty sure it's a 3. Anyway, and I used both types of cutters. The reason for this was I wasn't sure which way I wanted my fox to sit inside the ball. So I thought, let's go ahead and do both. Once I got that cut, and I rip off this clay here, and mind you, I'm using my baking powder, or I should say my my baby powder here. I use that too. Anyway, I made sure that when I go to cut down with this on these cutters, I use that. It worked pretty good. And then when that's done, I use my little bit of a wet towel or a wet baby wipe to go ahead and bring up any extra powder on the clay. Once I got these 2 foxes cut, I put them in the oven at 275 degrees for about 10 minutes. And then I was looking at this thing and I thought, okay, take the black out. And I brought in some of my really, you might say, a pretty dark blue, navy blue kind of clay, and I added a little bit of my glitter clay into it. So this way then it'd have a little bit of a sparkle to it, and then started pushing this sheet, which was actually rolled out on a number 5 setting using my Atlas pasta machine, and just starting to tuck some of this in here. Now, this was a little bit hard to manage, so you're going to have to cut. I suggest cutting smaller sheets of your dark blue clay and putting it in piece by piece. What you can do is you can push it into the sidewall in the ball itself, and then use your thumb or even your burnisher if you wish to. Frankly, you can use your fingers to kind of mesh it together and smooth it out. Now, once you have all that blue filled in on the ball inside, you're going to go ahead and roll out a sheet of silver clay on your number 4 setting using your Atlas pasta machine and bring in your your Kemper star cutters and just start cutting out a bunch of little stars. You'll also do that on a sheet of white as well. Once you have all of your stars cut out, you're going to gently, with your blade, lift them up off of your plate or off of your tile, and you're going to start placing them inside the ball just randomly on the back wall. And make sure you just push them down gently so that the blue clay will attach into those white stars and they'll stay in there really nicely. Once you have all your stars put into the back wall of this ball, you can go ahead and place that circle of black that you had originally cut out and place that down on the bottom of our little pumpkin ball, and then take the ball and set it to the side. Okay, so here's probably the hardest part for everybody, and that's going to be creating the tree. Right here I have 4 pieces of 22 gauge green wire, and I'm going to twist them all up together at first, and then as I get further along, I'm going to branch off where I have 2 of them that twist up together, and then the other 2 that twist off together separately. Now, I'm not going to twist it all the way. I'm going to make sure that at the end of each twist, I'll let some of the wire just go freely off on its own direction. And this is going to be our little tree. Now, part of this is going to be something that you're just going to have to do and practice a little bit. The green wire should be fairly short. I mean, it's not going to be that tall of a tree inside this ball. It really is not. So you'll have one section where it's all twisted up together, but then make sure that two of those wires branch off and they go off into one direction, whether it's left or right, I don't care. Depends upon how you want to have your fox sitting in the actual scene when you place them into the scene itself. I like to have the tree off to my right side. Like if I'm facing you, it would be my right, so it'd probably be your left. And then the fox is going to be off on the other side of it. As I'm forming up this wire tree, I'm curling up the end here. I wanted to make it so that it would kind of sit upright for myself just a little bit. And I'm doing that. I'm trying to give it a bit of a base. But here's the thing. I have to go in and I have to make this thing be the right size to fit inside the ball. So as I'm twisting it up, I sit it upright on my table and I'm like, is that too tall or is that too short? And most of the time it's always too tall. So I had to go back in and I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, I want this to veer off a little bit into single wires. So I had to untwist part of it, and you could see here I'm using my ball as my measuring tool to figure out where I need to have that tree completely be cut off. So in other words, the branches need to be a little bit shorter, or I need to untwist a little bit, and this will help in creating and forming up your tree for the ball that you create in doing this design. Once I'm satisfied with how my tree is looking and I've got it all trimmed up the way I want it, I'm going to bring in some of my dark brown clay and a little bit of my gold. I was trying to go, which one do I want to do? Which one do I like the best? And I finally decided on the dark brown, and I'm going to twist some of this and push this around the wire armature I have created. And as I go, you're going to be tearing off and you're going to be pulling off extra pieces of brown because you want to get this so that it looks like a tree and not some big blob. Because I always wind up where I put the clay on, it's like, okay, now it's too blobby. I got to pinch it around the wire. And so this is just going to take a little bit of doing in creating the tree itself. All right, so as I was putting this tree together, I was re-looking at that gold again because it's pretty dark. You got a dark blue sky, and then you've got kind of a dark brown tree. You need something to lighten it up with. So I'm bringing that gold back in, and I'm cutting a section of this off, and we're going to just kind of lightly, gently, if at all possible, and that clay was rolled out on a number 5 setting, so it's pretty thin. And you're going to just wrap this around the trunk of your tree as best you can. If it doesn't look great, or I mean, if it doesn't look uniform or anything like that, don't worry, because I come in later with my burnisher and I just kind of tap it down around the trunk. You know, I just push it in a little bit here and there. If you need to use a knitting needle or something, just to kind of burnish in a little bit of this gold that you're wrapping around on the trunk of your tree. Now, once I've got my tree burnished down where I really like it with that gold, I'm going to place this into our little pumpkin ball that we've set off to the side. Remember, the base and the interior have not been baked yet. So that makes this nice because then the tree, when you stick it in there, it will naturally kind of glob on, you know, unbaked clay to unbaked clay. And that way then you'll have something. Now, this is also a time in which you take your little box and you figure out where you want him positioned. And I really liked him there, so I thought I'm going to push him down slightly so I have an indent on that black piece on the bottom. Now, I'm bringing in my Keoker Autumn Cutters here. I loved this set. I've used it before. I thought, let's go back and reuse it again because I thought, yes. It's got some really nice fall leaves. It had a cute little squirrel feature in there. I mean, it was just like, yeah, we got to go ahead and look at this. And the nice thing about this set, along with the Tainsky, is that it worked together in the regard of size. I had looked at that owl that I was thinking about doing earlier. They were the same size, so it wasn't going to work. I'm also bringing in a little bit of a piece of Skinner blend of magenta or red to yellow, and I'm going to make or create my little fall leaves, my little maple leaves right here off of this sheet. And as I was creating these maple leaves, you know, I thought, let's go ahead and bring in some solid colors. So I brought in a little bit of my gold, a little bit of a deep red, and then also kind of that orange. I want to say it was the gold with the red that I mixed together, and then a little bit of red, and just made some solid leaves in those colors as well. Now that I have a lot of these leaves already kind of cut out, I'm going to take each of these and I'm going to start placing them into the ball. I had removed my little fox. I thought he doesn't necessarily need to be in there, but I have an indentation of where he was. So I'm going to place each of these little leaves into the areas that I like the best. So like right around the base of the tree there, and then even a few on the tree itself, and just creating this nice little fall leaf-like area. Now I want to mention here really quickly that as I was putting these leaves in here, I did go back in with my little fox and kind of nestled him down on the base again in his spot where I had him before to make sure that the leaves would conform to where he would be placed eventually. All right, so as I was creating my leaves, I decided, you know, that squirrel had to come out and I had to do it. So I rolled out some brown, and this brown was rolled out on a number 4 setting on my Atlas pasta machine, and I thought that should be thick enough. And if you don't think it's thick enough, go with a number 3. Number 3 on your Atlas pasta machine, and cut out your little squirrels. Now, as I was doing this, I brought out a second, you know, the other squirrel that faced the other direction, just in case. So if you want to make it thin, you could go ahead and then cut that out and then use the other one that you've cut out in the opposite direction and mash them together. You could always do that just in case. I also brought out the little mushrooms, and because I was looking at that and I thought, doggone, those would be so cute. Oh, I mean, who doesn't love the mushrooms, right? So in that same brown clay, I went ahead and cut out some of my mushrooms because we have to add that into this particular little scene anyway. All right, so now we're going to start working on the outside part of our pumpkin area here. And I'm bringing in a little bit of brown and I'm going to have it go right over the handle on this ball. And we're just going to kind of twist it up. I'm going to use my needle tool to make some indents on it to kind of make it look like it's a bit of a vine that's been splintered off, and then you have the pumpkin right there. And I'm also going to use some of those leaves that I had setting off to the side. I'm going to place them in on top, along with a couple of short pieces of 22 gauge green wire. And that wire doesn't necessarily have to be fairly long. We still need to bake this thing yet eventually. But before we do, I was looking at this stem and I like it. But I liked the hole in the center too. This way then, if you really wanted to, you could hang this thing. And I thought, let's go ahead and add that in. The nice thing about having that hole there too is, you could add in extra stuff. I mean, if you want to add in a little chain with a little bit of a doodad on the end, you could. And so I thought, yeah, we're going to go ahead and reform that hole. I used my burnisher along with my needle tool to reform it and get it going for me. And then, of course, I brought in my needle tool to make some extra lines on this stump or on the handle of this pumpkin. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to let you guys watch my hands talk as I finish up the outside of this pumpkin ball. All right, so now everything has been thoroughly baked. I just need to state that right off. Our pumpkin ball has all been thoroughly baked. All of the little pieces have been thoroughly baked. And so now it's just a matter of painting. So I'm coming in with a little bit of my black acrylic paint and I'm painting up the little nose and mouth area on my fox. And that's only because, that little indent, it was indented in. So I'll paint that in first and then I'll come in with my white acrylic paint and place the white paint right over on either side of that with my 10-aught brush. So make sure you use a really nice detailed brush to get all the little areas the way you need it and to get that definition when you go to paint in these areas. Now, once I'm putting in the eyes on the fox, I use a lot of paint here, so I'm going to let him dry for a little bit, and I'm going to move on to my mushrooms. And I have my metallic paint markers, which I love. I love these guys. And yeah, I had cut out some pumpkins earlier on, so I thought, just in case I want to use them in the scene, I never really did, so I'm going to put them off to the side eventually. But I decided I wanted to use them on my mushrooms. So I'm using a little bit of my metallic orange. I used a blue, a green, a nice gold. I want them in different colors. And then the bottoms I painted with a white. And then I came back in and eventually I'll put in more details and I'll use just a little bit of a white dot thing on the tops of these little mushrooms. Once I got my mushrooms dotted, I had to go inside the ball. And right where the stars are going on the back side of the wall, I just started putting some acrylic, paint dots, large and small, kind of representing tinier stars out there in the universe, right? In the sky, in the night sky. And then eventually I come in and I start doing the leaves themselves, just a little bit of an added detail into all of our little leaves on the tree and on the ground. All right, so at this point, I'm bringing in some of that metallic paint, or I should say the paint pen, and we're gonna do up one of my little squirrels here. And I just thought, yeah, we're just gonna make it a solid color. He's very tiny, he's not that big. And then I'm gonna bring in a little tiny bit of my white acrylic paint, make my little eye right in his head there. And then from there, I'm just gonna start putting these pieces or gluing them into place with my super glue inside the ball and adding it on the outside as well, curling up my wire and just having some fun with the rest of it. Anyway, so from here, guys, I'm gonna go ahead, I'm gonna let you guys watch my hands talk as I add in more little features to our cute little pumpkin. Okay, so as I was twisting up my wire, there was something I forgot to do. Once you know it, you get to the very end, you're thinking, oh, doggone, I forgot about that part. So on the opening of, that goes into the inside of this little clay pumpkin, there, the outside edge was really unfinished. So I created some more of my little checker in my black and white, and I took this stuff and I decided to feature this, or I should say frame the opening in my little ball here. So I took some of my super glue, and yes, I used super glue. I didn't use the liquid clay in this at all, and part of it was just because sometimes I'd be attaching the glass, which it wouldn't, you'd have to attach in with an epoxy glue. So that's what I'm doing here. And I took some fresh black and white, checker and outlined the entire opening. And it was a little bit wider in my checker because I wanted to make sure it would go all the way around. And instead of just trying to trim it up with my blade, instead I went ahead and I just gently pushed it over. I made sure it was outlined on the outside edge and then pushed over the other part with my finger. And that way then it just framed it up really nice. It looked really good. And I wouldn't have to go in with my blade to make sure it would finish up right. And once I got this curled edge all the way around, I rebaked this at 275 degrees for about 7 to 10 minutes. Okay, so this is the end result of creating my little fall scene in a pumpkin ball. Please use this for study and reference. And if you like this video, please bop the like button, and subscribe, and leave me a comment. I'm always wondering what you're thinking. Otherwise, I am sending out my biggest hugs to each of you, and I hope you have a fantastic day.